I will never forget the night I opened that door. Just a small crack, but it tore my life apart. The people I trusted the most were the ones holding the knife behind my back. They thought I would stay quiet. They thought I would disappear, but they didn't know. I had something left, a secret, and a plan. From that moment on, I swore things would not end the way they wanted. My name is Aurelia Voss. I'm 29. I used to believe my life was stable, maybe not perfect, but solid enough. I had a steady job at an investment firm, a boyfriend who looked good on paper, and a family people would describe as respectable. But that was all surface. The truth underneath was different. I'm telling this now not to complain, but to remind myself that what happened wasn't a dream. That morning, my mother sat at the kitchen table stirring her tea. She didn't even look at me. "You're late again," she said flatly. "I stayed late." "Audit prep," I answered. She sipped. "You're almost 30, Aurelia. No one wants a woman who works all night and can't keep a man." It stung, but I was used to it. She always compared me to my younger sister, Eliza. To her, Eliza was the strong one, the polished one, the real success. I bit my tongue and made my coffee. In my head, I thought of Marcus, my boyfriend. I wanted to ask if he was coming for dinner that night, but before I could, my phone buzzed. His message popped up. "Busy. Rain check." That was it. No heart, no warmth, just a full stop. At lunch, Eliza called. Her voice was sharp. "Hey, can I borrow your blue satin dress? Tonight's Whitmore's gala." "What for?" I asked. She laughed. "Marcus is coming with me. Don't get the wrong idea. Work-related." My hand went cold around the phone. "He's going with you?" "Relax, Leah. Optics, that's all." I hung up before she could say more. That evening, I still showed up at Marcus's apartment. I carried a box of donuts tied with red string. I wanted to believe this was all a misunderstanding. The door was slightly open. I knocked. "Marcus." From inside, laughter. Eliza's voice. I pushed the door. There they were, standing in front of the mirror. Marcus fixing his tie. Eliza adjusting her hair, wearing my blue dress. They looked like a perfect couple. The box slipped from my hands onto the table. "Leah," Marcus said, walking toward me. His voice was low, rehearsed. "You didn't text first." Eliza didn't even turn. She smiled at my reflection in the mirror. "Donuts? Cute." Marcus pulled me into the kitchen. "Don't make a scene." "Things are complicated." "Complicated?" I looked him straight in the eye. "No. This is simple." And I walked out. At home, my mother was waiting. She wasn't surprised. "I know," she said calmly. "Eliza is a better match for Marcus. She's strong. You dream too much." I laughed, bitter. "So this was your plan all along? To hand him to her?" She shrugged. "I just want what's best." "Best for who? For Eliza? For Marcus? Or just for her own idea of a perfect family?" I didn't answer. That night, I packed my things. On the edge of my train ticket to Chicago, I wrote 3 words. "Watch me grow." The next morning, I left at 4:30. The house was quiet. I set the keys on the table with a note. "I'm not a product you can put up for comparison. I'm done." I didn't sign it. She would know. The station was dark and cold. I sat with my suitcase waiting for the train. The glass window gave me back my reflection. A woman who had lost everything, but finally had a promise. "Watch me grow," I whispered. For the first time in years, I actually believed myself. Chicago didn't welcome me. It hit me in the face the moment I stepped out of Union Station. The wind was sharp, the kind that slices through your coat and goes straight into your bones. I dragged my suitcase across cracked sidewalks and tried not to look like someone who had just run away. The first place I rented was a single room in a shared apartment. The paint peeled off the walls, and the heater groaned like it was dying every night. But it was cheap, and it was mine. The next morning, I sat at the small desk by the window and opened my laptop. I had sent out 20 resumes before leaving home. No replies. I sent out 20 more. By the third day, I was eating instant noodles twice a day. I kept receipts in a folder, counting every dollar. One night, my roommate, a grad student named Kelly, knocked on my door. "You're always on that laptop," she said. "I'm job hunting," I muttered. She leaned on the doorframe. "You know half the people here get jobs through someone they know, right? Not online." I forced a smile. "I don't know anyone here." "Then you'll have to work twice as hard," she said simply, and walked away. She wasn't wrong. 2 weeks in, I got a rejection email at midnight. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. For the first time since leaving, I cried. Not loud, not messy, just silent tears while I sat in the dark. The next morning, I forced myself to go to a networking event downtown. A bland hotel ballroom filled with strangers in pressed suits. I felt like a fraud in my thrift store blazer. At the registration table, the woman asked, "Company?" I froze. Independent. Between firms." She looked bored and handed me a name tag. I wandered around, balancing a plastic cup of wine I couldn't taste. No one looked at me twice, until I heard a voice behind me. "You're standing like you want to leave." I turned. A man in a gray suit, tall, steady gaze. "Patrick Reynolds." "I don't," I lied. He raised an eyebrow. "Then why haven't you spoken to anyone in 20 minutes? I blinked. "You've been watching me?" "Observing," he corrected. "There's a difference." I crossed my arms. "And what did you observe?" "That you're not here to make small talk. You're here to prove something." His words hit too close. I almost snapped back, but instead I asked, "And what are you here for?" He glanced at his watch. "To find someone who actually has ideas, not just a polished resume." We stood in silence for a beat. Then he said, "What's your background?" "Finance. Investment analysis," I answered. "Which firm?" "Meridian. Until I left." His eyes flickered. "Why?" "Because sometimes leaving is the only way to survive," I said before I could stop myself. He studied me like he was weighing an option. Then he said, "Send me your resume." "Patrick Reynolds, Meridian Investment Group. Use my name." And just like that, he walked away. That night, back in my freezing room, I rewrote my resume 5 times before sending it. I typed his name in the subject line, hands trembling. I whispered into the silence, "Watch me grow." And for the first time since stepping off that train, it didn't sound impossible. The email came 3 days later. "Interview scheduled at Meridian Investment Group, Wednesday 10 a.m. I stared at the screen for a full minute. My hands were shaking so badly I had to put the laptop down. Wednesday morning, I wore the only suit I had. Navy blue, 2 years old, slightly tight at the waist. I ironed it 3 times, but the fabric still carried faint creases. My shoes had been polished so often the leather looked thinner. The Meridian office towered above the street, all glass and steel. I stood outside for a second, watching my reflection in the doors. I whispered, "Don't screw this up, Leah." Inside, the receptionist gave me a professional smile. "Name?" "Aurelia Voss. 10 o'clock with HR," she nodded. "Take a seat. They'll call you." I sat down, clutching my folder. A man passed through the lobby, fast, confident. Patrick. He didn't look at me, but I caught the hint of recognition in his eyes. The interview room was colder than I expected. 2 people waited inside, a woman from HR and Patrick himself. "Miss Voss," HR began, flipping through papers. "You worked at Meridian before?" "Yes, 2 years as an analyst." "And why did you leave?" I hesitated. "Personal reasons." Patrick cut in, his eyes fixed on me. "Be specific." I swallowed. "Because I was underestimated, and because I wanted to build something real." Silence. HR scribbled something. Patrick leaned forward. "Give me an example of a time you failed." My throat tightened. "Failed?" "Yes. Everyone rehearses success stories. I want the opposite." I forced myself to breathe. "At my last project, I recommended a partnership with a logistics firm. On paper, it looked clean, but I missed a red flag in their supplier audits. It cost the team weeks of work. People didn't let me forget it." Patrick's expression didn't change. "And what did you do?" "I owned it. I went back through every line of the report. I stayed until midnight for 3 weeks, rebuilding the model. We saved the deal, but the mistake stayed on my record. People still saw me as careless." HR glanced at Patrick, almost nervous. He nodded slowly. "At least you didn't blame anyone else," he said. Then came the test. Patrick pushed a folder across the table. "Case study. Hollingsworth Plastics. Read it." I flipped it open. Supply chain numbers, compliance reports, ESG statements. My heart pounded. "What do you see?" Patrick asked. I scanned fast. "Margins are fine, but their Southeast Asia supplier has 0 audit transparency. That's a risk, financial and reputational." He raised an eyebrow. "Most candidates would have started with profits." I shrugged. Profits vanish the second the press runs a headline about labor violations. Reputational damage doesn't show in quarterly reports, but it destroys value faster than any spreadsheet. For the first time, I saw him smile. Just slightly. "Interesting answer." When it ended, HR shook my hand politely. Patrick didn't move. He just said, "Send me a 2-page memo by Friday. Assume we're considering a deal with Hollingsworth. Your recommendation, full risk analysis. No fluff. If it's good, we'll talk." I nodded, heart hammering. "Yes, Friday." Walking out of the building, I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for hours. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Eliza and Marcus are engaged. Thought you should know." I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, the city roaring around me. My chest burned. I deleted the message without replying. Then I whispered to myself, "Watch me grow." Because now, I had something to fight for. Chicago didn't welcome me. It hit me in the face the moment I stepped out of Union Station. The wind was sharp, the kind that slices through your coat and goes straight into your bones. I dragged my suitcase across cracked sidewalks and tried not to look like someone who had just run away. The first place I rented was a single room in a shared apartment. The paint peeled off the walls, and the heater groaned like it was dying every night. But it was cheap, and it was mine. The next morning, I sat at the small desk by the window and opened my laptop. I had sent out 20 resumes before leaving home. No replies. I sent out 20 more. By the third day, I was eating instant noodles twice a day. I kept receipts in a folder, counting every dollar. One night, my roommate, a grad student named Kelly, knocked on my door. "You're always on that laptop," she said. "I'm job hunting," I muttered. She leaned on the doorframe. "You know half the people here get jobs through someone they know, right?" "Not online." I forced a smile. "I don't know anyone here." "Then you'll have to work twice as hard," she said simply, and walked away. She wasn't wrong. 2 weeks in, I got a rejection email at midnight. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. For the first time since leaving, I cried. Not loud, not messy, just silent tears while I sat in the dark. The next morning, I forced myself to go to a networking event downtown. A bland hotel ballroom filled with strangers in pressed suits. I felt like a fraud in my thrift store blazer. At the registration table, the woman asked, "Company?" I froze. Independent. Between firms." She looked bored and handed me a name tag. I wandered around, balancing a plastic cup of wine I couldn't taste. No one looked at me twice, until I heard a voice behind me. "You're standing like you want to leave." I turned. A man in a gray suit, tall, steady gaze. "Patrick Reynolds." "I don't." I lied. He raised an eyebrow. "Then why haven't you spoken to anyone in 20 minutes? I blinked. "You've been watching me?" "Observing," he corrected. "There's a difference." I crossed my arms. "And what did you observe?" "That you're not here to make small talk. You're here to prove something." His words hit too close. I almost snapped back, but instead I asked, "And what are you here for?" He glanced at his watch. "To find someone who actually has ideas, not just a polished resume." We stood in silence for a beat. Then he said, "What's your background?" "Finance." "Investment analysis," I answered. "Which firm?" "Meridian. Until I left." His eyes flickered. "Why?" "Because sometimes leaving is the only way to survive," I said before I could stop myself. He studied me like he was weighing an option. Then he said, "Send me your resume." "Patrick Reynolds, Meridian Investment Group. Use my name." And just like that, he walked away. That night, back in my freezing room, I rewrote my resume 5 times before sending it. I typed his name in the subject line, hands trembling. I whispered into the silence, "Watch me grow." And for the first time since stepping off that train, it didn't sound impossible. My first day at Meridian didn't feel like a new beginning. It felt like walking straight into a battlefield. The office was an open floor of glass and steel, filled with people who looked like they were born in designer suits. I carried my laptop bag like armor, pretending I belonged. Patrick introduced me quickly to the team. "This is Aurelia Voss. She'll be assisting on the Hollingsworth review." A few polite nods, a few raised eyebrows. No warmth. One guy, sharp jaw, slick hair, leaned back in his chair and smirked. "Welcome back, Aurelia. I remember you. You were here before, right? Didn't last long." Laughter rippled around him. Patrick's voice cut through. "She's here now." "That's all that matters." But I'd already felt the knife. The first assignment came fast. Patrick dropped a thick folder on my desk. "Run the risk analysis. 2 days. No errors." 2 days? I asked. His eyes didn't soften. "Consider it your probation." I worked until midnight, surrounded by the hum of empty desks. Kelly, my roommate, texted, "You alive?" I didn't answer. Numbers blurred. My eyes burned. I caught myself whispering out loud, "Check the supplier list again." Red flags. "Come on, Leah, find them." Finally, buried in a table, I saw it. A subcontractor tied to a shell company. No disclosure, no audit. It looked small, but if the press found it, Meridian could burn. I saved the file, exhausted but wired. The next morning, I walked into Patrick's office with the report. He skimmed it, silent. Then he tapped the subcontractor's name with his pen. "You caught this?" "Yes. Last night." His eyes flicked up. "Good." The last analyst missed it. Before I could breathe, the door opened. The slick-haired guy, his name was Evan, walked in. "Morning, boss." I just sent over my analysis on Hollingsworth. Patrick raised an eyebrow. "Did you flag the subcontractor issue?" Evan froze. "What subcontractor issue?" The silence was thick. Patrick's voice was flat. "Then your report is incomplete." Aurelia found it. Evan shot me a look that could kill. "So that's how it is? The newbie plays hero on day 1? I held my ground. "No hero, just facts." That afternoon, whispers started, people glancing at me, leaning together at the coffee machine. I heard one sentence clearly. "She's trying too hard. She wants Patrick's attention." At 6, as I packed up, Evan blocked my desk. "Listen," he said, voice low. "Don't think you're safe just because Reynolds likes your memo. Around here, people don't forget who embarrasses them." I looked him dead in the eye. "Good. Then remember me for being right." He sneered and walked off. That night, back in my freezing room, I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my mother. "Eliza's engagement party this weekend. Marcus wants you there." I laughed out loud, bitter. Did they really think I'd show up and play the weak, discarded sister? No. Not anymore. I opened my laptop and started drafting a plan. Not for Hollingsworth, not for Meridian, but for me. A list of everything I'd build, every wall I'd climb, every person who thought I was nothing. And at the top of the page, I wrote 3 words in bold: "Watch me grow," because the war had just begun. Patrick didn't hand out compliments. That's why his words shocked me. "You did good work on Hollingsworth," he said, closing the folder. "I don't say that often." "Don't waste it." I nodded, but my chest tightened. Was that approval, or just another test? A week later, he called me into his office. "There's a deal on the table," he said. Blackthorn energy. They look clean, but something's off. "You're coming with me to the client meeting." "Me?" I asked. "Why not Evan?" Patrick's eyes narrowed. "Because I want someone who actually pays attention." When he said that, I caught the way Evan glared at me from across the hall, his jaw clenched like a trap. The client meeting was in a high-rise downtown. I sat at the polished conference table, notebook open, trying to look steady. The Blackthorn executives were smooth. Too smooth. Every answer rehearsed, every laugh a little too sharp. Patrick asked them about safety standards. They slid past the question like ice on glass. I scribbled notes, my instincts screaming. During a break, Patrick leaned close. "What do you see?" "They're hiding something," I whispered. "Prove it," he said, and walked back in. That night, I stayed at the office until nearly 2 a.m. digging through Blackthorn's filings. Buried deep in a subsidiary report, I found it. A pending environmental violation in Louisiana. Not public yet, but about to explode. I printed the file and left it on Patrick's desk. The next morning, he looked at me for a long moment. "You just saved this firm millions," he said, and then softer. "Don't think people won't notice." People noticed. Too much. By lunch, Evan cornered me near the elevators. "Funny how you always manage to find the smoking gun," he said. "It's called work," I shot back. His smile was cold. "Or maybe you're feeding Reynolds dirt to make yourself look indispensable." "I don't need tricks to make you look incompetent," I said. The doors opened. I stepped in, but not before I heard him mutter, "You're going to regret this." 2 days later, it happened. I opened my inbox to find an anonymous email. Subject line, "You should watch your back." Inside was a single attachment, a spreadsheet that looked exactly like mine except altered. Numbers inflated, risks erased. And the sender claimed it was my work. If that file reached the board, my career would be over before it started. I froze, staring at the screen. My heart thudded so hard I thought I might throw up. Then Patrick's voice startled me. "You look pale. What's wrong?" I snapped the laptop shut. "Nothing. Just tired." But inside, I was already calculating. Someone was trying to frame me. And I had a pretty good idea who. That night, I sat in my freezing room, staring at the fake spreadsheet on my screen, my fingers clenched around the mouse. "They want me out," I whispered to myself. "They want me humiliated. Just like before." But this time, I wasn't going to run. I opened a new file. Evidence folder. Every email, every document, every trace. If they wanted a war, I was ready to fight back. And under the folder name, I typed 3 words. "Watch me grow." Monday morning started normal. Too normal. I should have known better. The boardroom smelled like burnt coffee and floor polish. Patrick sat at the head of the table, flipping through a binder. The rest of the team shuffled papers, whispering. I had no idea the hammer was about to drop. Then Patrick spoke. Calm. Too calm. "Aurelia, explain this." He slid the binder toward me. My blood ran cold. Inside was a spreadsheet. The fake one. The one that erased all the Blackthorn red flags. And at the bottom of the page, in neat black letters, were my initials. "That's not mine," I said instantly. My voice sounded small. Patrick's eyes didn't move. "It came from your email." The room shifted. Evan leaned back in his chair, smirking like he was watching a play unfold exactly as he'd written it. I forced myself to breathe. "Someone altered this. Those numbers aren't what I submitted." Patrick's tone sharpened. Then prove it. I opened my laptop with shaking hands. I pulled up the file directory. The real spreadsheet was there, but when I tried to open it, corrupted. Blank cells. My safety net gone. Evan's voice cut through the silence. Convenient. Maybe she's better at cover-ups than analysis. Anger flared in my chest. Or maybe someone planted this to get rid of me. Gasps. Whispers. Heads turning. Evan smirked. Big accusation for someone who's been here 2 weeks. Patrick raised a hand. The room went silent. His eyes locked on mine. Enough. I don't care about excuses. Either you bring me proof, or you're finished here. I swallowed hard. Give me 24 hours. His jaw flexed. 24. Not a minute more. When the meeting ended, I tried to slip out, but Evan blocked the hallway. His voice dropped to a whisper. You don't belong here, Leah. You got lucky twice. That's all. People like you always get burned in the end. I stared him down. My hands were trembling, but I didn't let him see it. Then remember me for being right. Because that's what kills you. His smile was cold. You'll regret this. Back at my tiny apartment that night, I tore through every folder, every backup drive, every email. Nothing. Every version of my file was corrupted, overwritten. Someone knew what they were doing. Kelly knocked on my door, carrying 2 mugs of instant cocoa. You've been at it for hours. What's going on? I rubbed my eyes. Someone set me up. If I don't prove it by tomorrow, I'm done. She sat on the edge of the bed. Then stop panicking and think. Who do you trust in that office? I let out a bitter laugh. I don't trust anyone. She didn't answer. She just handed me the mug. Midnight came and went. I stared at the fake spreadsheet glowing on my screen, the initials at the bottom like a death sentence. My hands clenched around the mouse. They think they've buried me, I whispered. But seeds grow in the dark. I created a new folder, named it Proof. Inside, I began collecting everything, email logs, metadata, timestamps, even the smallest crumbs. I didn't know if it would be enough, but I knew one thing. I wasn't running. Not this time. 24 hours. That's all I had. I looked at my reflection in the black laptop screen. My eyes were red, my face pale, but there was something fierce underneath. Watch me grow, I whispered, and I meant it. The next morning, my body felt like it hadn't slept at all. 24 hours. That was the deadline. If I failed, I'd walk out of Meridian with nothing but a suitcase of regrets. I brewed stale coffee, sat at my desk, and went through every file again. Nothing. Corrupted, erased, planted evidence. It was airtight. Whoever set me up knew exactly how to cover their tracks. But then I remembered something. My roommate, Kelly. She had once mentioned that her boyfriend worked in IT security. I grabbed my phone and called her. Kelly, I need a favor. A big one. You sound like you're about to rob a bank. Almost. Someone hacked me. I need proof it wasn't me. She sighed. Send me the files. I'll ask Ryan. But if this blows back on us, I'll take the hit. Just help me. By noon, Ryan sent me a message. Check the metadata. Whoever edited your spreadsheet didn't wipe the hidden tags. File shows last modified from a different device ID. My pulse jumped. I opened the report he attached. The device ID wasn't mine. It was registered under Evan's login. I almost cried. Finally, proof. At 3 p.m., I walked back into Patrick's office. He was alone, reading. He didn't look up. "Do you have it?" he asked. "Yes." I slid the folder across his desk. The metadata shows the file was altered from Evan's device. Not mine. Patrick flipped through the pages. His face was unreadable. "You're certain?" "Yes. If you want, I'll bring in the IT logs." He leaned back in his chair. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then he said, "Close the door." I did. My heart thudded. "You know what this means?" Patrick asked quietly. "That Evan tried to bury me." "And that someone inside helped him," he added. "Files don't get swapped that easily. He had help." The room felt colder. "So what do we do?" I asked. Patrick stood. "We set a trap." That night, Patrick arranged a review session with the team. Everyone was there, including Evan. On the screen, Patrick pulled up 2 versions of the spreadsheet, the fake one and the original. "Interesting," Patrick said. "One of these was edited from a device not belonging to Aurelia. Care to explain?" The room went silent. Evan laughed nervously. "Come on, are we really wasting time on conspiracy theories?" Patrick's voice cut sharp. "It's not a theory." IT confirmed the device. ID yours. Evan's smirk cracked. "That's ridiculous." "Anyone could have used my login." "Then why," I said, standing, "did the edit match your timestamp exactly when you were logged in?" Murmurs rose. Evan's face turned red. He opened his mouth, but Patrick's voice shut him down. "Enough. Pack your desk. You're done." Evan glared at me as security walked him out. "This isn't over, Leah," he hissed. "You don't know what you've started." My hand shook, but I didn't flinch. For the first time, I wasn't the one walking out in shame. But victory had a price. Later that night, Patrick called me into his office again. He was blunt. "You handled yourself well?" "But you've made enemies. Evan won't go quietly. And whoever backed him, they're still here." I swallowed hard. "So I'm still a target?" Patrick nodded. "Yes. But now you know how to fight." Back in my tiny room, I stared at the city lights outside the window. I thought about Evan's words. This isn't over. He was right. I had defended myself, but the war wasn't finished. The higher I climbed, the more dangerous the game would get. I whispered into the night, the same vow I'd carried from the start. Watch me grow. And this time, I wasn't just promising it to myself. I was warning them. 2 years had passed. 2 years of clawing my way up, of fighting every whisper, every trap, every sleepless night. And now, I was walking into the same kind of ballroom that once made me feel invisible. But I wasn't invisible anymore. The banners read, "Reynolds Capital Partners acquires Meridian Investment Group." Cameras flashed, champagne glasses clinked, and I stood at the center of it all. Not as someone's assistant, not as someone's lesser daughter, but as Aurelia Voss, co-founder and COO. And then I saw them. Marcus, Eliza, my mother. They were near the stage, dressed like royalty, basking in lights that weren't theirs. For a moment my chest tightened. Old wounds, old betrayals. but the fear was gone. I walked toward them, each step steady, each step mine. My mother spoke first, smiling too brightly. "Aurelia, darling, look at you. I always knew you'd rise." I laughed softly. "No, you didn't. You told me I wasn't strong enough, that I wasn't the right one." Her smile faltered. "Don't be cruel. Families fight, but we forgive." "Forgive?" I said. My voice was calm, sharp as glass. "You convinced Marcus to leave me for Eliza. You stood by while I was humiliated in my own home. That's not fighting, Mom. That's betrayal." Eliza jumped in, her tone defensive. "Stop being dramatic. Marcus and I, we were meant to be. You were always fragile." I met her eyes, steady. "Fragile? No, Eliza. I was underestimated. By you, by Marcus, by her. And maybe that's the best thing that ever happened to me." Eliza's jaw tightened. Marcus finally spoke, his voice low. "Leah, Aurelia, listen. We were young. Mistakes were made." I tilted my head. "Mistakes?" "Marcus, a mistake is spilling wine on a shirt. What you did, what you both did, was a choice. You let my mother decide I wasn't enough, and you agreed. That's not a mistake. That's cowardice." His face turned pale. He had no answer. Patrick appeared at my side, calm, unshakable. His hand rested lightly against my back. Not possession, support. "Everything all right here?" he asked. "Perfect," I said, my eyes still on the three people who once defined me. I raised my glass. "You wanted me small. You wanted me silent. You wanted me erased. But look around. I'm still here. Bigger, stronger, freer than you ever imagined." The room around us grew quiet. People were listening. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Eliza looked away, and my mother's lips trembled. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "We're family." "No, Mom," I said, gentle but final. "Family sees your worth, even when the world doesn't." You never did. Applause broke out across the ballroom as Patrick stepped onto the stage to announce the acquisition. The lights flared, the cameras clicked, and I turned my back on them. For the first time in my life, it didn't hurt. Later, standing by the window, Chicago's lights spread out before me. My reflection looked back, older, sharper, unbroken. I realized something. Revenge wasn't destroying them. Revenge was outgrowing them. I whispered the words that had carried me from the train station to this very moment. Watch me grow. And I knew with a deep, certain satisfaction that they finally had.